Well, 2020 is shaping up to be a pretty terrible year so far, so I thought why don't we travel forward a few decades to a better time. A time when an ominous volcano threatens life as we know it, and giant ants rule the earth. Well, sign me up. While Disney's animated movies of the 2000s have never really been held in high regard, especially compared to the preceding Renaissance era of the 90s, I personally think there are some real gems here, the likes of which I'd actually much rather watch than some of today's critically acclaimed releases. I'd certainly take Treasure Planet over Frozen any day.
I hate that movie.
One such gem from 2007 is Meet the Robinsons, a sci-fi time travel comedy adventure movie inspired by the children's book A Day with Wilbur Robinson by William Joyce. It's seldom talked about, but in my opinion, this movie is a major step up from previous releases, Chicken Little and Home on the Range.
That was good.
Contrary to popular opinion, I don't really consider these movies to be absolutely deplorable, but they are noticeably weaker offerings from an otherwise consistent studio. As such, Meet the Robinsons bears the burden of being the follow-up to what might be considered Disney's nadir, which more than likely explains why it's been all but forgotten. Some of the humour is a little forced, and some of the sci-fi twists are a little hard to swallow, but ultimately this is a really touching movie with good characters and a great message, and is, on the whole, a satisfying cinematic experience. But as per usual, that's not what we're talking about today. This movie was, of course, accompanied by a tie-in video game.
Oh no!
So, does this game stand the test of time, or should it be left in the past?
That is an excellent question.
The game begins in Egypt, for some reason. Why do so many games needlessly take a trip to Egypt? We join Wilbur as he takes a photo of himself with Tutankhamun. We could have at least taken a picture when he was alive, for Christ's sake. What was the point of time traveling?
Operation Tut is complete. Uh-oh.
What do you mean, Get out of there!
Here you learn about basic movements. What separates this game from a good many movie games is that there isn't a jump button. Wilbur has an automatic jump and will vault over any waist-high objects. He can also push and pull certain things and sidle across ledges. We eventually escape the collapsing tomb in a time machine and return to the present. By which I mean the future. The future present. If you catch my drift.
I'm sure that whatever minor alteration may have occurred will go completely unnoticed.
Unnoticed? Gee, you think they'll notice this? Chariot of the God?
Shortly afterwards, Wilbur's dad reveals he's off on a business trip.
Don't touch the time machine. Go on, you excellent decision. Alter existence as we know it, okay?
Absolutely.
Wait a minute.
Great, Dad.
Goodbye,
See you in
Wilbur.
a few days.
What did he say about the time machine?
He said, give him a Fribagobnop, we're gonna have to dig it, which means, have fun with the time machine.
Wilbur, of course, wants access to the time machine, his motivation solely based on the fact that he needs one more selfie for his collection.
To the time machine!
Yep, the stakes are high! We then get to explore the Robinson house as we need to access the garage. Yes, this is the future, a time when frogs provide evening entertainment, rooms are accessed by transport tubes, and people repeatedly interrupt each other before they finish their sentences.
Will you tell me the new garage
Roger,
code?
who's he? What's he?
Will you let me finish? So rude! Here we find Uncles Spike and Dimitri hiding in the potted plants about the house. Although I find it really weird that they don't really say anything but just randomly start screaming every so often. Oh come on, this game isn't that bad. Keep it together, man. First we need to speak to your mom, Franny, as it turns out the garage code has been altered.
I know you're disappointed. Taking out the garbage is quite a thrill ride. Now why don't you go ask your cousin Laszlo if he knows anything about
Where is
the
he?
code? Sounds like he's in the lab.
We then need to seek out Cousin Laszlo, who advises Wilbur to build a scanner to scan the garage keypad using a disassembler we find in a storage room. In the storage room, we get to exercise the automatic jump, which is altogether rather strange. It's kind of funny how he just flings himself from platform to platform, sometimes when you're not expecting it at all. And the noises he makes are unusual for a 13-year-old. Goddamn arthritis! Once we've obtained a disassembler, we can use it on certain objects to retrieve their components. There are 3 component types, and collecting enough of each of them allows us to assemble certain items using the transmogrifier.
Mission accomplished.
As you progress in the game and complete certain missions, you'll retrieve more blueprints for items to transmogrify, such as upgrades to extend your health and energy meters.
Now that you have a scanner, you should know I'm always on the lookout for chromatically interesting scans.
With our scanner, we can scan items. I mean, obviously. To check the items you can scan, you can simply press the scan button. Scanning an item or a character in a target mode adds it to your Scannerpedia.
Good scanner work, Wilbur.
If you scan all parts of a set or fill up a scanner disc, Laszlo rewards you with extras such as new blueprints and action figures accessible from the main menu. The action figures are a nice addition to the game, but I have to say having to scan absolutely everything in the game to ensure you don't miss one is somewhat laborious. But we'll go into more detail about this later. For now, we can scan the garage keypad, which reveals Grandpa Bud was the last to use it.
I need the code to the garage. You were the last one
There's
to...
no time for that now. You gotta help me find my teeth.
While Bud searches a big jar of peanut butter, we head to the music room, as it turns out the frogs have the teeth.
Great job, Wilbur. You scanned all the frogs.
Scanning all the frogs in the music room rewards you not only with an action figure, but also Grandpa's teeth. That's great. The frogs aren't bad musicians, but they'd be better if they were in sync. Just saying. Jesus, these guys would give the Shags a run for their money. Yeah, they exist. Go listen at your peril. I don't even know why the singer frog is even there. He's just sort of holding the mic and swaying, but he's not singing anything. You had one job, Frankie. One job.
Now, did you change the garage code?
Yep.
So, what is it?
I don't know. Someone else changed it right after I did.
Which doesn't really add up because we just scanned the keypad. But I'll take your word for it, old man. We then look for Uncle Art outside. To reach him, we need to use the protector sphere. What is it with all these games and their big purple force fields? I seriously hope Brad Bird's receiving royalties for this. The Protector Sphere allows you to roll through an obstacle course, and there are a few of these throughout the game. You can even try to beat the time limit for a reward. Like, who doesn't want a big ant head, seriously? Though I have to say, this is surprisingly difficult to accomplish considering all the obstacles along the path and how awkward the sphere is to control. And why are all these obstacles here anyway? This is my own garden, for crying out loud. Indeed, you need to roll around in a hamster ball to get to where you want to go. Which is kind of funny, since the following Disney movie game, Bolt, does not feature a hamster ball level, despite being the only Disney animated movie to my recollection to feature a hamster in a ball. What a missed opportunity to rehash the exact same level we've seen 3 times already.
I made a pizza delivery to Nebulon 5 and picked up a herd of Zumzats.
Of course, once we find Art, we're sent on yet another miscellaneous errand to retrieve the one-eyed morph creatures known as Zumzats dotted around the house. For this, we need our charge ball glove from our room, which becomes your primary weapon throughout the game and can be used to neutralize the weird little pink things.
We're dead.
Throughout the game, you can also play Charge Ball in Wilbur's room. As you progress in the main game, you're rewarded with VR discs, which provide you with extra Charge Ball locations and characters to challenge, and winning a match sees you rewarded with other items such as blueprints for other extras. The rules of Charge Ball are simple. You simply have to take out your opponent's blocks. Once you've destroyed them, you open up their goal, which, if hit, scores you a point.
Good one!
Occasionally power-ups appear, such as shields and ice blocks to freeze your opponent. It's a little tedious and it can be hard to access some blocks in the harder locations. Altogether, it's really not that fun to play, but it can be worth it for some additional blueprints. The use of your devices in the main game depletes your energy meter, which can be restored along with your health at the aid stations throughout the game.
Batteries at 100%.
Anyway, once we've retrieved all the Zumzats, we can return to Art, and maybe now we can finally find out who changed the code to the garage.
Grandpa Bud said you might know who changed the code to the garage?
Sorry, but I'm afraid I've been out making deliveries. Why don't you go ask your Aunt Billy?
So wait, are you telling me that last mission was completely pointless? Of course you are. Aunt Billy is in the train room, which is only accessible via the transport tubes.
Did you change the code to the garage door?
Oh, Wilbur, you've got to help me. I'm caught in the middle of a scheduling disaster.
What's the problem?
Naturally, she has another pointless task for you. Oh, joy! We need to revive the power for the train to work again. Here we're taught how to use the aim feature using the charge ball gloves. With it, we can hit a number of targets in succession. Performing this move on all the power switches restarts the train, and perhaps we can finally get to the garage!
You know who changed the garage code?
Why don't you ask your Uncle Gaston?
Oh, for God's sake! This is one hell of a lengthy tutorial level! I've forgotten what I'm going to the garage for!
I know you are the one who changed the garage code.
Right you are, nephew. But if you ever want to see the garage again, you'll have to face my cannon challenge.
Your talk does not frighten me, Uncle.
While in targeting mode, Wilbur can dodge back and forth and side to side to avoid oncoming projectiles and attacks. Throughout the game, if you return to the cannon range, Gaston increases the difficulty of this cannon challenge, the completion of which also leads to more rewards.
You are one with the meatball.
Thanks. I think. So, what's the garage code?
Fine. It's banana. but don't think it'll be so easy next time.
Finally, we can progress to the garage, which sees Wilbur leave the door open, leading to the theft of the blue time machine by the bowler hat guy, who does not look the least bit suspicious at all. This is actually pretty cool, as it essentially portrays the events leading up to the movie, even if they are somewhat mundane. Basically, all we accomplished in the last half hour was unlock the garage door. This is the future! What a time to be alive! But the game picks up as we have to break into Wilbur's dad's time lab. Here we need to avoid the security and, yep, laser grids. How original. Never seen that before. We also need to avoid turrets that fire these big orbs at you for some reason.
Why did you think a big balloon would stop people?
Shut up! That's why!
The biggest threat here is probably the robot sentries, who are surprisingly camp, actually. You'd have thought they'd have programmed them to be a little more, I don't know, menacing?
I'm a real toughie.
Some of the robots can be vanquished using only your charge ball glove, while some need their armor disassembling first. The most memorable part of the level for me is a lengthy sequence in which we need to use our charge ball glove to activate temporary paths of soda to get from one side of the room to the other. It's at this point that the problems with the targeting mode come to light. Flitting between the various on-screen items becomes quite the chore, and often you'll refuse to focus on the one thing you desperately need to target. No, not that. Not that either. Finally! Eventually we come to the first boss, the Robot Guardian.
Dad upgraded!
This simply requires you to power the various lenses and then use our charge ball glove on them before they deactivate to destroy the giant robot. So, not only did you break into your dad's time lab, you've also destroyed all of his security. Bravo, you're a master of stealth. With the time machine, we can now hunt for the bowler hat guy. This leads us to Joyce Williams Elementary. Get it? Where we need to follow a trail of clues left behind by our culprits, who's on the way to the science fair to steal Lewis's invention. Yeah, just watch the movie, it'll make a lot more sense. One thing I neglected to mention is that you can contact Carl for help.
Blueprints I pulled up show a vent on the second floor that leads into the kitchen.
Some of the help you receive is, well, helpful, and other times, well...
Hey, you have to go find that bowler hat guy.
Yes, thank you, I think I figured that out. Using our devices, we need to find innovative ways of entering the various rooms Bowler Hat Guy occupies, including having to use our disassembler on a vent, and even powering a crane to enter the library through the roof. Although it's never made explicitly clear just what Bowler Hat Guy is doing in these rooms.
Oh, goody.
He leaves notebook pages behind, but none of them explain his frankly bizarre behavior throughout the level.
Yes. Perfect.
What are you doing? Just go to the science fair so we can move this plot along. Once we get to the science fair, the game suddenly gets interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong, watching fat children fall out of lockers is fun, but this really ups the ante. Oh, well, you'll laugh in a second. Just wait and see.
Alright, I'm on my way.
Carl calls Wilbur back to the future as giant robot ants are roaming the city.
What's with all the girly yelling?
Well, at least it's not giant spiders for once. Every cloud. Oh, and there's a big volcano in the middle of town.
Let's just calm down, take a breather, and watch the sunset.
The clouds are burning.
Try squinting.
We now need to trace the whereabouts of the red time machine using a transponder remote, which we can build using parts we find at the junk shop in the industrial district. The trouble is, the monorail to the industrial district is off limits.
The volcano train system is currently closed due to dangerous robo-ant activity.
It's our job, of course, to fight off the ants at the station using the charge ball glove. Once we've progressed to the next area, we have to use our not-so-trusty hamster ball again. The hamster ball leads us directly into an ant ambush. Fortunately, we're saved by the esteemed charge ball champion, who the writers couldn't be bothered to give a name.
Hey, you're...
I know.
I'm...
my biggest fan.
I mean, come on, a man of such high stature surely deserves a badass name. I'm gonna call him Neil. Oh yeah. Neil then challenges you to a game of charge ball. If you win, you receive a new, more powerful varsity charge ball glove, which is more beneficial in taking out the ants. Although it does rather beg the question, why doesn't Neil eliminate the ants if he has the equipment and the expertise? Better still, we could have worked together. Instead, your reward is essentially the responsibility of saving the city by yourself, which feels more than a little backhanded to me. I don't want this. Can I exchange my reward for a Mars bar or something? I'll take a gold star sticker, honestly. We can then head to the other wing of the station, where we meet Barry the maintenance bot, who's late to work thanks to the ant infestation.
These turrets are our only means of defense. They must be protected at all costs.
Say no more.
It's our job to protect the turrets from oncoming ants, including flying snipers, which require you to disassemble them first to knock them to the ground. This part of the game is actually pretty irritating. Once again, the dodgy targeting lets the gameplay down majorly, as Wilbur insists on focusing on the turrets rather than, you know, the hordes of ants flying our way. Yes, it's a turret. It's great. Now move along. Once this is over, we can take the monorail to the industrial district, which is unsurprisingly infested with ants.
Go visit Jacoby over at the junk shop.
After finding a path to the junk shop, Jacoby refuses to open up.
I can't open the door until all the ants are gone.
Not only do we have to get rid of the ants, we also need to crush the anthills using surrounding crates. Once we've succeeded, Jacoby hands us one of the components we need, but he has no, transaluminum. Whatever the hell that is.
Those beastly ants made off with the last of my transaluminum,
Wilbur. Man, those guys get into everything!
They seem to be headed for Oldtown.
We then take the monorail to Oldtown, where we pursue an aggressive large ant to the rooftops and eventually corner it at an ice cream parlor, where we can give him his just desserts. And we can help ourselves to dessert afterwards. Once we've retrieved our transa whatever, we need to find a way to pass through the force fields blocking our way. So we return to the industrial district to locate some Havoc gloves to dig underneath them.
You get those ants out of my warehouse, and the Havoc gloves are yours.
Once we've found the Havoc gloves, we can use them to burrow underground and destroy the giant army ants from underneath. Pressing the attack button will also emit a sonic wave, which can be used as a form of attack. Now that we have enough weapons, we can also assign our gadgets to buttons of our choice. Before long, we encounter a Havoc glove seal. Using the Havoc gloves, you can burrow into one and navigate underground to your destination. There are a lot of Havoc glove seals in the game, and it's actually pretty interesting. It's like navigating an ant farm, pushing boulders and activating explosives to progress. Sometimes the ants can get in your way a little too much. And it becomes quite the annoyance to have to start over from scratch every single time, but it's a neat idea. Havoc glove seals are located all over the game, including the Robinson house, and completing the digging challenges within them leads to more disassembler chests for more rewards. However, this leads me to a major issue I have with the game. There are so many miscellaneous activities, such as these digging levels and the hamster ball time trials, and the game essentially encourages you to find and scan literally everything. The problem is that once you've completed a level, you can only return to a handful of locations. So basically, if you miss some stuff, tough luck. I swear to you, I've played this through 3 times and I've not yet managed to find all the action figures. It could boil down to something as simple as forgetting to scan a seemingly insignificant object, but they don't allow you to return to these locations to find out. The only way of finding everything is by starting the game over again, and scanning every single item one by one is quite the chore. Once we return to Oldtown, the ice cream vendor is in trouble. Not the ice cream! We need to use the Havoc gloves to burrow under the force fields and clear the rubble blocking the parlor, and take out the giant ants along the way.
While you were clearing the rubble, I heard there are children trapped in the lava at the old orphanage. What? And the worst part is, they're completely without ice cream.
Yeah, these kids are gonna die, but the ice cream! We need to use an underground protector sphere to reach the orphanage, which is irritating beyond belief. You're constantly having to wait for the steam vents and machinery to time your moves. I lost count of the amount of times I respawned thanks to falling in the lava. Once we've made it to the orphanage, we can scan the orphans. Bacon? Bacon smells bad. Bacon loves bacon. What the hell? Who wrote this? So anyway, we then need to dig to return them to the ice cream vendor. And honestly, with all these ants here, I barely made it by the skin of my teeth myself. Lord knows what happened to the orphans. It's every man for himself down here. Oh my god, look! The orphans! How the hell did you all survive? Guess you could say I saved your bacon, bacon. With the transponder remote apparently readily transmogrified for us, we then progress to the Hive in search of the Ant Queen, where we meet Melvin, servant to Queen Lizzie. I get it!
Yeah, I accidentally locked myself out of the Hive.
It's your job to find a way to disable the force field to let Melvin back in. Scanning the monoliths reveals a code, which when entered on a terminal disables the barrier.
Now I can go back to my job where the thrills never stop.
Melvin then decides to return the favor and help us, sort of. If we find him all the gold bugs in the Hive, he'll give us the key to the throne room. As we delve deeper into the Hive, we need to activate these so-called Havoc levers to open the elevator control panel. We also need to use our Havoc Glove Sonics on these crystals to light our way so we can scan the monoliths for the elevator code. With the elevator operational, we can progress even deeper, where we can do more of the same, I guess? Once we've activated another elevator, we can progress to the throne room, finally. But first we meet Melvin outside and hand him his bugs.
What do you need them for anyway?
Oh, this is what the vending machine takes.
Y'all serious?
Once inside the throne room, we find the time machine, but also encounter the creepy Queen Lizzie.
Destroy him.
First, we need to take out the lieutenant by punching him from underneath and luring a beam of light to him. Rather convenient that this happened to be there. Then, Lizzie just kind of stands there unguarded as we simply take out the power source to her Ant-Bot mind control helmet. Aha! But Lizzie has one final trick up her sleeve. Oh, she doesn't. That's it, I guess. Can we finish the game now? Indeed, Lizzie is beaten by a 13-year-old. Talk about anticlimactic. Get it? But that's not everything. Just as we find our time machine, we're accosted by some angry robots.
Halt by order of Emperor Stanley.
Stanley.
This vehicle is now the property of the Emperor.
No! Indeed, now we're off to Magna Industries under the watchful gaze of Emperor Stanley. By this point, we've been given a levitation ray. I'm not quite sure where it came from, but it's pretty neat. With it, we can levitate objects to reach previously inaccessible areas, and it can also be used to eliminate certain enemies. One of the most prominent enemies is the Eruptor. These little guys might look cute, but don't be deceived, he's explosive. Should you hit him with your charge ball glove, his pointy drill head will fall off, and it's not long before he self-destructs like a grenade. Fortunately, you can use this to your advantage to destroy some boilers to progress.
No one gets in here unless I say so! Except through the pizza delivery hatch.
Here's the triple supreme thin crust for His Excellence the Emperor.
Indeed, we have to make our way to the pizza delivery hatch. Once we're inside, we need to cross a vat of lava using our levitation ray. The next stage of the game is pretty lengthy and involves a lot of luring eruptors into vents to get them to destroy boilers. The only major annoyance is that the eruptors can take such a long time to chase you down. Oh, come on, I'm right here! So anyway, we then locate Stanley's lair.
Give me my time machine!
That's some evil laugh you've got there. But I've heard better.
Behold! Prometheus!
Stanley unveils Prometheus, a giant volcanic robot titan. But things go awry when he loses control and Prometheus goes on a rampage. Well, sort of. He mostly just kind of sits there. All the same, I'm not sure if it's just me, but this boss could do with a little more explanation. I was running back and forth trying to figure out what to do, and even turned to Carl for help at one point.
Oh, I can't watch!
You know what, for a help feature, you're really not very helpful. You need to levitate the rocks from the lava pool, and then use your Havoc gloves to smash them into the big lava robot's face. Luring his lava vomit onto the chains will loosen the rock, conveniently dangling overhead. And after all the chains are destroyed, Prometheus is defeated. But it's not over yet, as Stanley warns that lava is about to flood the city. And not only that, he drops a massive bombshell.
It's been this way my whole life. Ever since the science fair. The science fair!
Indeed, it turns out Wilbur's clumsiness is apparently entirely to blame for this dystopian future we see before us.
My aunt. Stanley, you klutz.
Wow, those are some seriously vengeful kids. So naturally, Wilbur heads back in time to rectify his mistakes and to not accidentally knock a fat child over, I guess. So now, we return to the main plot, as though the whole ant volcano thing never happened. Well, that was a waste of time. Bowler Hat Guy makes off with Lewis's invention and disappears in the blue time machine once again, so Wilbur returns to the Robinson house.
I've got timelines to scrutinize. Fly away, little monkey. Fly away.
Carl decides to search the timelines for the Bowler Hat Guy, while you can just kill some time, I guess. Before we move on to the final fight, we get the chance to explore the house one last time and complete some last-minute side missions. What's interesting to note is that Stanley and Lizzie are now friends of the household. Stanley turned out a successful pizza delivery guy.
Truly, you are a man who understands the majesty and depth of the pizza experience.
I'll say, we make a good combination, huh?
Alright, calm down, it's not that funny. Meanwhile, it turns out Lizzie is a pet shop owner and a friend of your mom.
You have a very shiny house here, Franny.
She's nonetheless creepy as hell. I'm not sure why you'd be friends with her, but alright. Once we're ready to leave, we just have to speak to Carl.
To the time machine! Again.
The Robinson house is then replaced by Mega Doris, a giant mechanical bowler hat. I hope to God you've seen the movie, because this really takes some explaining. In fact, even in the context of the movie, this doesn't make any sense. Wilbur shouldn't even exist. Oh, you know what, just go with it. Let's get this over with. This final boss sees us run up and down and press some buttons to activate some towers to distract the rampaging... hat. Once Doris turns around, we need to disassemble her outer shell to expose her inner workings and destroy her at her core. Finally, Wilbur decides his final photo should be of him and his dad. Yeah, don't worry, I'd forgotten that was a subplot too. He then returns to the past to fix more stuff, but we don't get to see that bit because the game ends, I guess?
Way to go, little buddy.
So, anyone for ice cream?
Ice cream!
Oh yeah! Wilbur Robinson never fails!
Meet the Robinsons is okay. I do like it. I appreciate what they were trying to do here, and the time travel twist for the most part works well, but the game is bogged down by some awkward gameplay and frankly dull locations. There are quite a few extras to unlock, but as I said earlier, there's so much effort involved in obtaining them, and they're so easily missable, it just doesn't feel worth it. There are some solid ideas here, and I like that it attempts an original story, but it winds up a fairly average experience. It's far from the worst game ever, but not what I'd call brilliant. Take it away, frogs! Actually, you know what? I think we'll play something else.